Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to another Pokemon X and Y analysis video. Today's video is going to be all about Meowstic, so let's get started by taking a look at this Pokemon's typing, abilities, and stats. So to start things off, Meowstic is a mono-psychic type Pokemon introduced into Generation 6, and one that can kind of be thought of as two Pokemon in one, due to some pretty distinct differences in the move pools of the male and female versions, and also the fact that the male and female versions of Meowstic have different hidden abilities. Now, the male one is supposed to be thought of as the more supportive defensive one, whereas the female is supposed to be thought of as the more offensive one. However, upon examining their move pools, the male one really doesn't get anything too spectacular, whereas the female one gets quite a few moves that the male one wished that it could get, which is really frustrating and unfortunate when you think about it. But as for the abilities, the first one that they share is known as Keen Eye, which is an ability that makes it so that your accuracy cannot be lowered, and also new this gen to this ability is that you completely ignore the evasion boosts of your opponent, which is something really cool. Now, evasion moves are still probably going to be banned in competitive play, but it's really nice to see an effort from the game developers to try and kind of balance that out a bit with this ability, which is kind of nice. As for its next ability that they both share, it is known as Infiltrator, which is an ability that allows you to bypass the effects of Light Screen, Reflect, and Safeguard, as well as new this generation, bypass the effects of Substitute, meaning that if your opponent has a Substitute up, you will just hit right through that and just do damage directly to the HP. You just completely ignore that that's even there, which is really awesome, and definitely something that will allow Meowstic to have some really great offensive presence in the battlefield, because it can completely ignore moves that would normally prevent you from attacking and hurting the Pokemon because of the Substitute being up. As for the abilities that are to each gender though, the male one has access to the Prankster ability, which is absolutely fantastic. This ability allows you to have priority on all of your non-attacking moves, which will definitely allow this Pokemon to run a very effective support set if you so desire to. Now, there is one move in particular that the female one gets that the male doesn't, that really frustrates me, and that's Me First, because that's a non-attacking move that you would have priority on, and it only works when you go before your opponent anyway. So it would be really awesome if the male one could get that, because it could attack the Pokemon before they get to attack it with the move that they might have used, and this is particularly effective on Pokemon that are weak to their own type, such as all the Dragon types, because you could like Me First and Outrage, and then it will do even more damage to them than you would have been taking, which is actually something really cool to think about. So I'm really frustrated that you can't do that, and I will just leave it at that. But as far as the female's hidden ability is, it is known as Competitive, which is an ability that increases your special attack whenever any of your stats are lowered. And these only apply to stats being lowered by an opponent. These don't count towards self-inflicted stat drops. Now, I don't think Meowstic has a way of lowering its own stats with any of its moves, but if it had like Superpower or something like that, that would not increase your special attack with Competitive. Say, for example, your opponent comes in on a Pokemon that has Intimidate, your attack will get lowered, but because of Competitive, your special attack will get boosted, which is kind of cool. But as far as the stats are concerned, Meowstic has base 74 HP, 76 defense, and base 81 special defense, which are pretty average defenses overall. However, because of Prankster and because of how Meowstic has access to some pretty great support moves, you should not hinder yourself in thinking that you can't run a defensive set on this Pokemon, because it is very easy to run a supportive defensive set because of all the great moves that it gets to utilize it, even though its defenses are about average. As far as its physical attack stats are concerned, though, it is base 48, which is not that high at all. And I'm sounding more exciting as I say this, but it's really not that exciting. Now, Meowstic does have access to Power-Up Punch, but please don't use that, because you're not going to be really doing any physical damage with Meowstic, no matter what, so don't even try. I'm just going to throw that out there. But as far as its special attack is concerned, it is base 83. Which is significantly better than its physical attack, so it will definitely be the attacking type of choice for Meowstic, and it has quite a few special moves to make use of with this special attacking stat. And then its speed is a really nice base 104, meaning that Meowstic will be a very quick Pokemon on the battlefield and be able to dish out some fast and powerful damage with its special attacking moves. So to start things off for the move sets on this video, we're going to be going first with a Timid Nature to increase Meowstic's speed but lower its physical attack, or a Modest Nature to increase its special attack or lower its physical attack. And then for the ability, it's going to be largely dependent upon whether we go with the male or female version of Meowstic and what you use in the last move slot, but it can either be Infiltrator or Prankster. As for the EVs, we're going to put 4 into its defense, 252 EVs into its special attack, and then 252 EVs into its speed to give it its max special attack and max speed possible. And for the item, there are 4 possible options on the set. The first being a Choice Scarf to increase our speed by 1 stage but lock us into a move. The second being a Choice Specs item, which is going to increase the power of our special attack by 1 stage but lock us into a move. Third being a Life Orb to increase the power of all of our attacks. We have the freedom to use them since we're not going to be locked into a move. However, it does have a negative 10% recoil every time we do attack. And then fourthly, going with an Expert Belt to increase the power of all the attacks that may hit an opponent for super effective damage. As far as the moves are concerned on the set though, the first one is going to be our main Psychic type attack on the set, which is either going to be Psychic or Psyshock. Psychic obviously is the stronger option. It hits the special defense of our opponents, whereas Psyshock is a little bit weaker and hits the physical defense of our opponents, even though it is a special attack. So it really is dependent upon what you think you're going to be up against, whether you're going to be up against more physical defenders or special defenders. Up next, we can either run Signal Beam or Shadow Ball as our second option on this set. Signal Beam is a move that only the female Meowstic can learn, however, so the male cannot run it, but both of these are really great for some really great type coverage. Signal Beam will give you super effective type coverage against Psychic types and Dark types, whereas it is unable to hit Steels for good damage because it's resisted, but Shadow Ball will allow you to hit Ghost types and Psychic types for super effective damage, but not allow you to hit Dark types. So to remedy that, we're going to be running a Hidden Power on the set, either Hidden Power Fire to allow us to hit Steel types for super effective damage and others, or Hidden Power Fighting to also allow us to hit Steel types for super effective damage, as well as Dark types. And when I kind of think about the set, I think of it more as the left side and the right side, whereas the left side would be obviously Psychic, Signal Beam, Hidden Power Fire, whereas the right side would be Psyshock, Shadow Ball, Hidden Power Fighting. But obviously any combination of any of these moves, including Thunderbolt and Energy Ball, which is in the last slot, can be used to give you whatever type coverage you want. And obviously Thunderbolt and Energy Ball can be put in the last slot to run a fully offensive set to give you some more super effective type coverage. However, you could also run Trick to allow you to pass your item off to an opponent, potentially locking your opponent into a move if you do use Trick in combination with a Choice Scarf or Choice Specs. Now it's interesting to note that with Infiltrator, you can actually trick opponents that have a substitute up, which is something that's really cool. But with Prankster, you have priority on your tricks, so that's also something to keep in mind, and kind of will dictate whether or not you want to use the Infiltrator or Prankster ability. But since this is possibly a choice set and just a full attacking set as well, like I've been doing in many of the other analysis videos, we can run Sleep Talk as a way to attack while we are asleep, making Meowstic perfect sleep fodder. And if you use Sleep Talk in combination with the Prankster ability, since Sleep Talk is actually not an attacking move, all of your attacks that you pull when you're using Sleep Talk will have priority, which is something really freaking awesome to think about, and something that can be really effective, possibly even in doubles or something like that, if you decide to put your own Pokemon to sleep, because you could then have priority with your Meowstic, and that's just kind of something really cool to think about. As for this next set, we're going to be using a defensive boosting set on Meowstic. So we're going to start by giving it a Bold Nature to increase its physical defense, but lower its physical attack. And for the ability, we can again choose between Infiltrator or Prankster. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into its HP, 252 into its physical defense, and then 4 EVs into its special attack to give it its max HP and physical defense possible with the Bold Nature. And for the item, we're going to be going with Leftovers to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. As to the moves, we're going to be first running the famous Substitute Calm Mind combo, which will allow us to get behind a Protective Bear to shield us from statuses and other attacks, while also allowing us to easily set up with Calm Minds, which will be boosting our special attack and special defense by 1 stage every time we go for it. Now, the reason why you might want to consider using Prankster on this set is because you will have priority in your substituting and Calm Minding. However, Infiltrator will allow you to hit through other people's substitutes and also through Light Screen and Reflect and Safeguard as well. But for the main Psychic type move on the set, we're again going to be choosing between Psychic or Psyshock, but we also have the option of running Stored Power on the set as well if we are using a female Meowstic. And Stored Power, if you don't know, starts off as 20 base power and increases its base power by 20 points more for every stat boost you have acquired. And this is especially useful because we are going to be boosting both our special attack and special defense by 1 stage, so every time we Calm Mind, we're actually boosting Stored Power's power by 40 points instead of just 20, which is really great. Now, keep in mind that Psychic will still be the most powerful move on the set outright, so that might be the reason to run it to begin with, but if you do expect to always have a chance to set up with this Meowstic, Stored Power is obviously going to be the strongest option if you do get at least 2 Calm Minds to make it stronger than Psychic, but Psyshock could also be used to allow you to hit special defenders on their physical side and potentially do a lot more damage to them than you would normally be able to. But for the second move on the set and the coverage move, we're either going to be going with Signal Beam if you have a female Meowstic specifically, or Hidden Power Fighting for either Meowstic that you might be using. Signal Beam, keep in mind, hits Psychic and Dark types super effectively but can't hit Steels, whereas Hidden Power Fighting hits Steel and Dark types super effectively, but can't hit Psychic types. So it's really whichever one you think you're going to really need the coverage for. You might want to consider running a Pursuit user possibly if you want to use Hidden Power Fighting, because you could get rid of those Psychic types a lot easier. Whereas if you use Single Beam, it might be a good idea to run something with like Magnet Pull or Arena Trap to try and get rid of those Steel types. But more often than not, you should be able to have pretty good coverage just between your Psychic move and either your Bug type Signal Beam or your Fighting type Hidden Power Fighting, so you'll allow you to do some pretty good damage. Now there is an alternative way to run this set, which is a more offensive variant. So we're going to start with this version by running a Timid Nature or an Adamant Nature to increase your speed but lower your physical attack, or a way to increase your special attack but lower your physical attack with a Modest Nature. And then for the EVs, we're going to put 4 into our defense, 252 into our special attack, and then 252 into our speed to give us our max special attack and speed possible. And for the item, we're going to be going with a Slack Berry to allow us to boost our speed by 1 stage once we reach below 25% of our health. Now to help us along in reaching that health range to activate the Slack Berry, we obviously have Substitute, which will be allowing us to take away 25% of our health every single time we go for it. And obviously this is again to work in combination with Calm Mind. The move choices on the set are also the same. However, do keep in mind that if we do go with Stored Power, the Slack Berry boost will actually increase the power of Stored Power by 20 more points. So that is something to kind of consider when using the set in a more offensive variant, because Slack Berry can work in combination with Stored Power very well. But otherwise, this set, or this version, is just a more speedy offensive version than the more defensive one that you just saw. And both of them work extremely effectively as either being able to wall attacks really well, or just to be a very fast and powerful special attacker. And lastly, I have a fully defensive support set for the male Meowstic to run. So we're going to start with a Bold Nature to increase its physical defense but lower its physical attack, and then we're going to be going with its hidden ability Prankster. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into its HP to max that out, 104 EVs into its physical defense to give it some good investment into that, and then 152 EVs into its special defense to also give it some good investment into that stat as well, to give you some nice mixed defenses to take hits from both the physical and special side. And as for the item, we could either go with a Light Clay, because we are going to be using Light Screen and Reflect on this set, which will increase the duration of both of these moves to 8 turns instead of their usual 5, or we could go with Leftovers as a way to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. But as for the moves, as I said, Reflect and Light Screen are pretty much the crux of this set. You will have priority when using these, so you will always be able to put up a screen before your opponent is able to attack, which is something that's really awesome and something that will definitely help this Pokemon's defensive capabilities. And with the Light Clay, you can pretty much continue to support your team with screens for a very long time. Maybe come back in, set up screens again later in battle if you have the opportunity to, because you'll be taking reduced damage from all types of attacks. It's also kind of important, in my opinion, if you do run Light Clay, to use this Pokemon with a Wish Passer to keep Meowstic's HP up throughout battle so that it can continue to screen. And one Pokemon, or actually one type of Pokemon in particular that works really well with Meowstic, are Fairy types that have access to Wish, as they will also be resisting the Dark type and Bug type moves that you are weak to. So that is something to keep in mind as maybe a cool defensive pair with this type of Meowstic. But the main attacking move on the set is going to be Psychic. Don't really need to mess around with Psyshock on the set, because Psychic is the stronger option and also has a chance to lower our opponent's special defense, which is always a nice added effect if you ever get it. But for the last move slot, we're going to be running one more support move on the set, which could either be T-Wave, which is obviously going to have priority because of Prankster, which will allow us to cripple any speedy attackers that are not ground types or electric types by paralyzing them, and also making it so that they have a chance to not attack when it is their turn to attack. We could also run Yawn on the set as a way to potentially put opponents to sleep, as well as also potentially cause them to switch, because they will obviously have to switch so that they can't be put to sleep, and that's something to keep in mind as well. Or we could also run Toxic in the last move slot to allow us to slowly drain away our opponent's health with Poison, if they are obviously not a Steel or Poison type or have the immunity ability. So overall, all three of these options for status are very useful on this Pokemon, and it's also important, I think I should note, for Toxic at least, because you are dual screening, your opponent won't really be able to do much damage to you, which will allow you to effectively Toxic Stall a lot better. So that is something to just keep in mind when picking the last move, but Thunder Wave probably is the most useful for crippling speedy attackers, and Yawn could also be there for some use as well, but it's all really dependent upon your team and your preferences as a Pokemon battler. But anyways, that is it for this video, everybody. So I hope you enjoyed this exhibition on Meowstic and the male and female versions of it. By the way, the male one is the more blue one, whereas the female one is the more white one, just to point that out. But as I said, or as I've been saying in all my videos, please follow me on Twitch and on Twitter, and bookmark the Google Doc in the description, which will have all these sets as well as all the sets that I'm doing the analysis series with. And feel free to join the Zat at zat.com/pokegrounds. Thank you everybody for watching. Take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.